Okay. Uh, Welcome back to Drop or Not. That's right. You thought it was over. You thought I ended it, and I did too. But I realized, hey, this decade's coming to an end. And everybody's doing their, top 10 of the decade lists. And I did do one that I posted on Twitter, but I wanted to have a better one, like one where I've actually seen, all the notable stuff and really can make a fair assessment of what I would consider to be the best of this decade. So that brings me back to the good old drop or not formula, because for a lot of these, for the more recent years, I don't plan to cover them in my Every Anime Reviewed series, because there's so much stuff, and a lot of it just doesn't merit having more than like 30 seconds of conversation about it. Like, I tend to force myself to consume more than I normally would, to be fair. But for Drop or Not, I don't feel any need to be fair. This is all about me. So the goal here, we'll see how far we go. I'm gonna do it in podcast format because I think it's better, more fun for you guys. Because I have good microphone quality. I don't have to worry about saying with my camera, so that's easier for me. And we'll see how far we go. I'm gonna start with 2010. I've got my randomizer. I threw literally everything into there. And I'm just gonna watch stuff that's not sequels, and not unsubbed. Basically, anything that doesn't fall into those two categories that I can find online will be good to go. So I just finished Seitokai Yakuindomo, a 13-episode anime by Studio Gohans, and it was pretty good. I mean, I finished it, so that should be evidence enough to that fact. It's a pretty straightforward for Koma adaptation, a school club comedy following this guy who gets forcefully pushed into the student council after he enters a school that used to be all girls, but has recently become co-ed, so it's mostly girls around, and the other three members of the student council are girls, and he's supposed to give the guys, side, is the reasoning behind why he's forced into joining. But the core behind the comedy is mostly a lot of innuendos and sexual jokes, based largely around the fact that two of the characters are kind of stupid, ditzy, and also quite perverse. And just generally a lot of characters and humors comes from varying levels of that. But for me, what made me like it so much, I gave it a solid 7. I could see maybe dropping it like a half point or something, but I think a 7 out of 10 is pretty fair score for it, is because the visual direction really sells it. It's surprisingly dynamic and creative, and it gives it a lot of personality. It has been a while since I've watched one of these, school life, school club comedy type things where most of the show is them going through, a pretty rote system of activities. They sit at a table and talk about something which creates a joke. They go on they have the school festival, they get some jokes out of that, they go to the beach. It's pretty much every single thing that you would expect from this type of show, this show has. Which can lead to them feeling kind of samey, not very interesting, because they follow a very similar structure and often have pretty similar character archetypes. But yeah, the visual side of things gives it a distinct personality. And then on the straight humor side of things, most of the comedy is based around varying levels of sexual innuendo, with 2 of the 4 student council members being quite perverse, and everything sort of playing off of the varying levels that people sit on that scale. And like the main character, obviously he's the sort of straight edge. He's always the one coming in with the, fast, like, Kyon-like response that's shooting the absurdity down. But it does work pretty well, I think. It largely because some of the jokes I almost miss because a lot of them are quite based around the Japanese language and Japanese wordplay and stuff like that. So they can be kind of hard to catch right off the bat. I imagine it'd probably be more immediate if I, understood the language instead of having to work off the translation and fill in the gaps sometimes, which is sometimes what you need to do. But for the most part, I thought it was pretty effective, and I'm a big fan of that type of humor where it's like you almost miss it or it takes you a second when it's moving fast enough. I mean, my only big complaint would be that between the gags, because it's very clearly a 4-Koma adaptation, and it does not try and change the structure of things at all to make it feel like it's not one. At the end of the gag, which is likely the end of the panel that it adapts, or like page it adapts or whatever, there'll be like a sort of pseudo title card thing that sort of just reinforces the punchline or just says something pretty straightforward, and it's kind of annoying, feels like a waste of time and kind of pointless, and it occasionally it's used for good comedic effect, but other times it's just kind of like, why? But yeah, for the most part, I was laughing. I was into the characters. The animation in particular is what I think had me the most engaged, just seeing the different ways it visually presents things. And it does a lot of fun stuff. Like watching it felt like the people making it were having fun with it. There's multiple different segments where it just cuts away from the main characters and does something else for a little bit. There's like, in the last episode, there's an entire sequence where it's like a preview for a fake magical girl show that lasts like a couple minutes. And it actually, I mean, honestly, the preview looked pretty good. Like, I would watch that show, but stuff like that is a lot of, or like various imagined things, is pretty fun. It gives it a nice sense of variety, which I think it would be easy to get too bogged down, and because most of the comedy is centered around one type of joke, but it's kind of impressive how much variety they managed to get out of that. So yeah, I'd recommend it if you're looking for a solid anime comedy. I would say this is definitely one of the better ones that I've seen that's like very straightforwardly a comedy primarily and not primarily anything else. Alright, I watched like the first 8 minutes of Ookami Kakushi. It's some sort of supernatural horror show thing. I don't know. You can read the premise on Mal if you care. Really, my issue has nothing to do with the actual narrative. It's more the visual side of things, which is pretty lackluster. I think the biggest factor that is making me not interested in seeing more of it is there's a really big disconnect between what it feels like the emotions are trying to be conveyed, what emotions it feels like are trying to be conveyed versus the characters' just expressions. Most of them have like just really lifeless faces, like partially the character designs and partially the animation itself. And then also there's some pretty ugly CG. The background art is pretty meh. I mean, I like the soundtrack, but I don't really want to look at this for much longer than I did. So, yeah. A Brightening Life. This is a 8-minute short about a trash bag. It's pretty nice. I mean, granted, I'm giving it extra props just because it's stop motion, and I really like stop motion, so especially because I feel like I don't watch much of it nowadays because it's pretty rare in the sphere of anime. I just am more inclined to enjoy it because I like it and don't see it very often. And I'll have to say that this did get a little cheesy at times. Like, it definitely felt like they were trying to get you to really sympathize with this poor trash bag without giving you much reason to care. but ultimately in the end, I was into it. I like the way it uses lighting. I think that's probably the biggest strength of this short. The way it the different varieties of effects it gets through light are really nice to look at, and the conclusion is pretty satisfying. It feels like a nice little resolution to the arc of everything, and the soundtrack is actually really good. In fact, it's kind of too good in a way, because certain times the music is like expressing a really strong, poignant like emotion of like really deep sorrow or pain, and I don't feel like what I've seen of the short like up to that point would merit such a level of emotion. So that created a bit of dissonance, both literally and between the two. But overall, it was pretty enjoyable. It was pleasant. I'd recommend giving it a watch if you like stop motion, but definitely not the greatest thing in the world. Oh, sorry if there's a sudden shift in my quality. I just figured out there was some weird thing going on with the game, but I figured out what the problem was and fixed it. So I might sound a little different, but hopefully better. I watched Mudazumo Naki Kaikaku. It's like a short, like technically 3 8-minute episodes about political world leaders playing shogi. It's or not shogi, mahang. It's not very good. There's some fun expressions, but to be honest, the sense of humor just does not ring with me at all. I mean, the joke is the premise. Like, the premise is the joke. If the idea of that makes you laugh, then maybe you might like it. But for me, the humor is so just in your face and over the top that I just don't really enjoy it. I either want like variety in my comedy, like the over the topness is the surprise, not the baseline, or just generally I tend to prefer more subtle, down to earth humor. When it gets too over the top, I don't know. I just find it obnoxious, and that's how I felt about this. So yeah, I'm beginning to wonder if it was maybe the wrong choice to include shorts. I included them because I like them and I think they're interesting, and I want to watch more of them because I think there's a lot of really cool stuff out there that doesn't really get talked about because it falls into this format. But there's also a lot of really bad shorts because like short anime can be produced by a very small production team. Therefore, there's a bunch of them. And this one, Kobe to Watashi, it's basically just an ad for a city in Japan. There's quite a few of these things, but this one is really overt about it. It doesn't look very good visually. It's just there's nothing to it that I have much of anything to say about from what I watched of it, because I didn't even bother finishing it after I felt like I got the impression. So I think for continuing forward, I'm only going to talk about the shorts that like left some sort of impression on me. If I click on it and it's like there's nothing to it, or it's just like an ad with no interesting visuals, or something like that, I just won't bother talking about it. But you can rest assured that I probably at least clicked on the first few seconds. All right. So it's funny that right after I say I'm only going to talk about the shorts that are worth talking about, I immediately find a short that's worth talking about. I watched the 5-minute stop motion animation Ansoku no Basho. This is a pretty nifty little short. It's kind of going for that kind of like horror-ish thing where like it gets darker and the ending is pretty creepy, kind of. Not that it's actually genuinely unsettling, but I think more the just general weirdness of it is what made it an enjoyable viewing experience for me. The whole thing is done with these like wooden dolls, which at first I wasn't so sure about, but by the end I think I was sold on it. The sort of emotional stillness, because I mean their faces are literally made out of wood. They don't emote outside of, moving their body. Actually meshes quite well with the general like tone and themes that it's going for, since it follows the story of this guy loses his job, is working part-time, handing out balloons in a bunny costume. He comes to love this costume, like describes it, I think like they describe it like text on screen, because nobody talks, like it feels like home to him, and he feels like comfortable there, and we see like his work life was bad. His marriage, you can see, is also not so good. Every time he walks in, you see like it's framed in a way that like cuts him off from her, and she never like directly engages with him ever, even though they're frequently in quite a few shots they're in the same scene. So there's some cool stuff going on there. And then the whole aspect of, particularly when he gets like sucked into the costume, when he chooses to wear it like 24/7 because he's so obsessed with it, there's this really neat visual of it, like the inside of the costume, and it's like this giant expanse, and he's like sitting in there, and there's like the tiny little like mouth hole that he was looking out of is like up really far away. It's like this huge area, and it's like just this neat visual effect. And generally the stuff like that, when it starts getting a little bit more supernatural, was pretty fun to watch and cool to look at. So I was into that. Overall, I think it's trying to be kind of dark, but comes off as more goofy, ultimately. But it was still pretty fun to watch, so I'd recommend it. It was neat. All right, now that was a trip. So I watched the first episode of this series of shorts called Doubutsu Kankyou Kaigi, or as it's known in the English title, the Animal Conference on the Environment Project. Yeah, this is a very strange children's show. It looks vaguely familiar. Like I feel like I've seen this somewhere before, but I definitely haven't. Like watching it doesn't ring a bell, but like it looks like something I've seen before. And I feel like this main character, like they just copied his design from something else that I have seen, but I can't like put my finger on what it is. But this is about as bizarre as you would expect from something that they decided to run with the title of the Animal Conference on the Environment for the English title, because it is dubbed. All the episodes are on YouTube, which I found through their official website, and it's not good. I mean, all of it is like this really low quality puppet animation, like a flash puppet animation. Like literally the characters are like just one image. When they move around, they move the whole thing around, and like when they turn, they like literally flip it, like it's a 2D image that like just spins. It looks pretty bad and pretty ugly. But there's just something about it that is so bizarrely unique. Like the whole, I think a large part of it is the soundscape, because it's pretty lax on general sound design. There's pretty minimal sound effects. Most of them are pretty realistic sound effects, like just general ambiance of nature or whatever, but nothing too wacky or wild. The general attitude of it is pretty lax also. It's very chill, and the soundtrack is like this impressionistic jazz piano that's so not the type of thing I would expect out of a children's show, educational children's show. It seems so out of place because it's very different in the type of tone that I would expect something to be going for, but it does seem to be going for the tone to match the soundtrack. Like it's much more laid back, as I said. And there's like one moment in the first episode where they're like, they're trying out life without electricity, and they look up at the Milky Way, and they're like, "Oh, life without electricity isn't so bad after all." And the piano sort of sweeps over as you get this like beautiful, quote unquote, shot of the Milky Way, and it's like just this moment, and it was just so weird to me that something like that was in this. Now, is it good? No, I don't think it really executes what it seems to be going for very well, because I mean, English version has bad voice acting. It's really obnoxious. There's really long pauses between all the dialogue, which also makes it kind of insufferable to watch. Like, this 5-minute first episode felt like a 15 to 20 minute episode. Like, it felt way longer, and not in a good way. But it was interesting that it seemed like there was some intent and a unique personality to it, which I appreciated. Alright, so I watched the first half of the first episode of MM ! And it was unpleasant. I did not really enjoy that at all. Basic premise, masochist meets sadist. That's basically the thing of it. The masochist guy wants to break his masochism so that he can confess to the girl he likes, but sadist girl is going to try and break him of it by beating him up, I guess. At least that's what the premise seemed to be based on, like what I watched of it. And you know how I was talking about how I don't like comedy anime that are really obnoxious and in your face? That's this. That is its entire sense of humor, is just he gets beat up and it's really over the top. That's the joke. He's a masochist. Ha. That's so funny. I mean, I guess the girls are kind of cute, but it's like the 50-50 cuteness, where like half the time they look pretty attractive, and the other half the time they just look retarded, depending on how they're drawn. So not too into it. I don't like any of the characters' personalities. I find them all pretty insufferable. I imagine this appeals to someone, but I'm not the one. Even though I'm into some, like faint masochistic fetish stuff, it's not like this. I don't like it in this way. Especially, this really over-the-topness of it, I'm not a fan of. I just find it pretty obnoxious when everybody's just screaming all the time. It's like, shut up. So you're gonna have to give this one a hard drop, I think. And it also doesn't help that it tries to be serious sometimes. Like, it'll have a point where it pauses and like the tone gets a little more dramatic, and I'm waiting for like the joke to happen, but no, it's just an actual dramatic scene. I'm like, this doesn't work. These characters do not function in any type of non-comedic situation, which also makes them way less interesting compared to a show like, I don't know, Kaguya-sama, where like you can actually care about the characters on an emotional level, while also their personalities work really well for humor. So yeah, this one, not a fan. Gonna have to give that one a pass. Arrietty. So this is one of the few Ghibli movies that I had not seen yet. There's a couple others that I'm working my way to getting around to. But yeah, I was like, oh, Ghibli. I like most of their films, generally speaking. I think I'd say there's only 2 films that I actually like dislike from the whole studio. And then there's a couple that are a little more middling for me. And unfortunately, Arrietty turned out to be on the middling end of things. I was pretty into it at the beginning, actually. I think there's like a particular scene where you see Arrietty, who's a borrower, or like a little person. She's entering, they're going on their first borrowing, and she goes into, it's like the kitchen, And there's this whole sequence where like this giant landscape unfolds before her, and you hear all these different sounds, like the ticking of the clock and the like sounds of pipes and the refrigerator, all these little noises that we don't really think about, but that are definitely present, and are much more present for someone that's smaller because sounds are going to be louder for them. And that was really cool. Like, it brought my attention to the sound design. And from that point on, I noticed how well executed the sound design is. Like, it really feels like a central element is how it utilizes sound in all the different ways to create this sense of place and environment and experience. And that element I like a lot, and I mean, it's a Ghibli movie, so it looks quite good. But ultimately, where my issue lies is in the introduction of an antagonist figure, which comes... I mean, they're introduced in the beginning of the movie, but they really fulfill their role of antagonist around an hour in. And at that hour mark, I kind of lost interest. Like, the whole time, I was pretty invested from the beginning of the movie. Like, but once that plot started unfolding, I started, wondering when the movie was going to end, because it's just not interesting. Like, they're not a very interesting antagonist. They don't have much personality besides, I guess, they're bad. We just need someone to oppose the main character to draw out the plot of the movie more. Like, it doesn't feel like they served any, valuable thematic function. And generally, this is one of my bigger ultimate issues with the film, is it doesn't feel like it really had anything to say. Like, when the movie comes to a conclusion, I was kind of thinking, I was like, what was the point of this? Like, okay, we saw some cool small things from a small person's perspective, but what was the ultimate point of it? What was the resolution? Was it trying to convey a message? Was it trying to depict, a character's growth? And in both cases, I don't really feel like we got that. I feel like that was present, but only in a very superficial sense. Like, the element is like, Arrietty comes across this boy that she ends up befriending who's quite ill. At the end of the movie, he's like, through my time with you, it gave me courage to, really press forward and try and fight this illness, because he was somewhat resigned to it before, which is basically the payoff for a dialogue they have, I guess maybe like 15 minutes earlier in the movie, where he's basically saying like, oh, your race is dying out, you're not gonna last because you don't fit in this world. And she's like, well, we're gonna keep fighting, and we'll make it, we'll survive. So that personality of hers that wants to press forward inspired him. But it's not that much of a thing in the movie. Like, those two scenes are the only two scenes I feel like it's really present. I didn't even get the impression that he was resigned at all from the earlier segments. I mean, he struck me as a quiet, more reserved figure, but that doesn't mean you're resigned to dying. I didn't really feel like I don't know. It didn't really do it for me. And then with Arrietty herself as a character, she doesn't really change or grow at all over the course of the movie. Like, at the end, she is pretty much the same character, albeit with a little bit more life experience. Like, nothing about her perspective changed. She was always more open to humans, and it was only really because of her parents' resistance that she sort of like didn't engage with that until a little bit later. So it's not like there was some great resolution, or even her family, like, they never really addressed that a human is helping them and that maybe they should reconsider their perspective on relationships with other humans. Like, at the end of the movie, they just sort of are like, well, let's accept things the way they are. The status quo is left unchallenged. They leave. I'm spoiling the movie, sorry, but I don't really think it makes a difference or matters. But they leave the original house because they were spotted by humans, so they can't stay anymore, because that's the rule they go by. and it's just kind of like, well, I guess things are just gonna keep on being the same, even though clearly this established system is not really the ideal, and it could be improved upon. There's no implication that anyone is ever going to pursue that, or that the film thinks that should be pursued. So it's not a very fun ending. I mean, overall, movie is pretty alright. Arrietty is a cute character that has a likable personality, even if I feel like it didn't develop as much as I wanted. And the element of the sound design, I think, is what would be worth watching the movie for, because it really, like, not only is it well done, but it's one of the few series where I feel like it intentionally draws your attention to the sound design, because most of the time you don't pick up on good sound design, because good sound design is most often done in a way where you don't even think about it, unless it's bad. But in this case, it's good, but it just there's a lot of scenes that give time for you to really take in the sounds of the world around you, which is cool. So yeah, that's Arrietty. Okay, it's been a good bit since I recorded. Obviously, for you guys, it's been the matter of like 2 seconds, but I recently finished making my way. I'm currently watching a longer 2010 anime, like right now, which I'm working my way through, but I just took like an afternoon and evening, and watched through pretty much all of the shorts that came out this year, like everything that's one episode under 20 minutes long. So I'm just gonna quickly rattle off some of the things that I thought were worth checking out. I'll do like a least good to most good kind of ranking. Basically go through everything that I gave a 6 and up. So first would be Yubi o Nusunda. Sorry, Yubi o Nusunda Onna. This is woman who stole fingers. It's kind of creepy, eerie short with a very distinct atmosphere. There's kind of like a body horror element to it. It's very uncomfortable, but in a distinctly intentional manner that I thought was pretty entertaining. Next is Umikara no Shisha, which is a 8-minute short. It tells this little fantasy story about this like superhero guy, whatever, ends up fighting monster. It's an interesting mesh of genres. The whole thing's in black and white, with no dialogue. There's some like subtitled dialogue, as in like thing, but nobody ever talks. It's mostly just sound effects and music and the visuals. And there's some pretty cool action sequences in it. I think the moral element of it is pretty heavy-handed, and the actual narrative itself feels like it's missing something. Like it feels like it was taken out of a longer narrative, and just like this tiny little piece is all we got of it. But ultimately, it was really entertaining on a visual perspective. The spectacle of it works really well. It's pretty impressively well animated. Follow up from that, 2T2. This kind of surreal, short, very short. I don't have a whole lot to say. It looks cool. Lots of circular imagery, which I'm really into, stuff like that, where it's like something comes, where it's like the short starts in one place and it sort of loops back onto itself. Those are always a lot of fun, very trippy. After that, Tsumamareru Koma. This is another one of those kind of circular type ones that also is very short but quite fun. Pretty unique visual style. I dug it. Tsuki no Sango. This is one that I didn't think I was even gonna watch, because most of the time when I click on these shorts and I see it's like a music video with a bad song and like it's barely animated, or it's just like a short that like is one of those shorts where it's mostly just dialogue and there's actually nothing going on with the visuals. It's mostly just stills. Usually I end up dropping those. Like I don't even mark them. I'm like, no thanks. But this one, Tsuki no Sango, apparently the light novel is part of the Type Moon franchise universe. I don't know how all that stuff works. But this short is like a little excerpt. And the dialogue and just general atmosphere of it was pretty compelling in spite of the fact that there's not a whole lot going on with the visuals. Like, the aesthetic is nice. The soundtrack is a big draw because it's using a pretty famous Chopin piece that's quite compelling. So ultimately, it was a pretty fun time. Follow up from that, we have Old City Ward. This is a music video directed by Ryu Kato, who is up there in my rankings of like animators when it comes to like short form animation. He's got a very unique style. It's very like, it's literal paint. Like, he animates with paint, which gives everything a very unique type of imagery to it. Even the way he designs his characters too is pretty distinct. And this is a fun one. It's a little repetitive in that, like, as it goes on, because the song is like 6 minutes long, which is on the longer end for a song, for your average song, I'd say. It starts reusing some animation, and it starts to lose its draw. But overall, worth watching for his cool work, though definitely not the best thing he's done. After that, Climber, which is a cool short. I've said cool and short like 80 times in this segment. This one is visualing the climbing of a guy. It's got this like graphite look to it, which lends it a sense of really like roughness. Like, it really is depicting this like struggle against all odds. Which is what I think it captures pretty well. It's not really about being invested in like the narrative. The whole thing is the guy's climbing. That is the whole short. But it's more like the general like atmosphere of it, and the sensation of that like struggle as he keeps climbing, and it has some really cool visuals paired with that. Okay, moving on to things I've given a 7. We have Yuri, Seijin, Naoko-san. This is a manga adaptation, and it's a OVA. There is another OVA that came out that's later, that's a little longer, like in the 25 minutes or something. This one's only 6, but it's like basically the vibe I get. There's an alien that came from planet Yuri, and the premise is they're plotting to conquer the Earth by Yurifying it. They are with some girls, and general comedy ensues. The way it's structured seems like the original comic was for Koma. That's what I'm assuming, at least. But yeah, it's lots of fun Yuri gags and humor. It's pretty funny, I would say. It got me chuckling, and the character designs are very cute. So I was into it. It's fun and pretty funny, and pretty well put together overall. After that, we have Ichirin-sha, which is a kind of a sad example, because this one was originally meant to be a full-length movie, and this thing was, I guess, like a trailer or like a pitch video. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but the film got canceled ultimately, so this is all we have. And it's pretty good. It gives me really a Trigger vibe. The sort of like over-the-top character of it has that attitude to it that's really, really appealing. The characters are fun. Even in this just short segment, it's not even translated, but a lot of what they're saying, like, I would say translates without like you needing to understand the language itself. It's not too difficult to understand, and it's just a lot of fun to watch them bounce off of each other through their voice acting and their dialogue. Plus, you have this whole sort of like post-apocalyptic future type setting to it that I am a big fan of. There's some cool action sequences. It is incomplete, very much so, but ultimately it was a worthwhile experience. I'm glad I watched it, but boy do I wish that it was a full thing. That's pretty sad. After that, we have Hana Beam, This is a music video. And a big part of why they like this one, because watching a lot of the music videos, usually I don't even bother to finish them. Because, like I said, a lot of them have pretty mediocre visuals. Because, like, I don't know, a band's probably can't afford to pay for, an insane production. And also, a lot of the music is just really lame. It's, like, generic and unappealing and not something I want to listen to. And in a music video, the music is playing is like at least 50% of the appeal of the thing. At least. Usually it's more, which is why it doesn't matter that much if the visuals are doing something super, insane. But I'm watching this more for the visual element. This one, the main track is really, really, it's like this sort of electronic mixed style. I'm not sure how to describe it. It's really groovy and funky and like unique sound to it. Like very sample based kind of. And then the visual element, there's no story. There's like sort of a small narrative, but the general attitude of it is just cool visual ideas. But the reason it works is because it doesn't overstay its welcome at all, and the visuals and music fit together so well that it's just so much fun to watch. Like Hanabeam was just a bop, and the aesthetic, it has this like look of I don't know how to describe it, but it's like this CG look that I associate with like the PlayStation 2 era video games, where it's like pretty flat textures with strong like color contrast and usually pretty thick outlines around the models. I really like that look of CG, and I think it works pretty well as like it doesn't get dated. And that's what this has, and I like it a lot. It's really appealing. It's a lot of fun. Lots of cool visual stuff that fits well with the music. It was just a joyride. Following that, we have Akai Sakana, Rain and the Fish, which is a fairly short piece about a boy in the rain, and there's a fish. It's very much kind of tone piece. The reason I enjoyed this one so much is largely because of the visuals and the way they mix together with the sound. It has a distinct atmosphere to it that doesn't really need like a cohesive sense of narrative to be appealing. I mean, that's a lot of the reason I like these types of shorts, is because they can craft something that doesn't really rely on telling a explicit, like super straightforward story. It's more of the experience of it that is what you get out of it. And this one I really don't know how to describe without you watching it, but I thought it was well worth watching. Following that up, we have Pandane to Tamago-hime. This is one of the Ghibli museum shorts, which I watched a screen recording of on Vimeo. And I mean, it's Ghibli. Ghibli's good. Ghibli's gamer. Ghibli's very, very excellent at everything they do. This is a nice little short story of an egg and a dough boy, basically, that seems to be brought to life by the spell of this witch. And so the witch is kind of like the antagonist. There's no dialogue. It's just a lot of fun to watch their sort of like run. I mean, it very much gives a sense of like a kind of ride, like as you just follow their experiences and you get a sense for their characterization. But like I said, Ghibli, just the animation is so gorgeous, and every character has a lot of personality just from the way that they move, in a way that is distinctly, I would say, part of what makes Ghibli's works so good. So I enjoyed that one a lot. And finally, of the shorts, we have, I don't know if I'd say this one is better than the last one I mentioned, but I definitely did like it a lot, and that's Kuchao. This is one of the weirder ones. The whole thing is framed in this kind of, I'm not sure what the word for the style is, but it's when it's like a spoken monologue accompanied by shamisen, and also sometimes some sort of percussion. It's a very small ensemble. I don't know what the name for that style is. It's escaping me, but I know it's like a defined like kind of thing. But that is set to this boy, the story of this boy, and it's bizarre. It's very strange, but it's also really distinct. And I think the difference is that like often a lot of the absurd ones are either kind of annoying or they like drag on too long, like they just get boring after a while. This one is very unique. The visual element is always super engaging and interesting, and like there's definitely ideas you could pull away from the experience, but in the moment it also is very engaging just for how out there it can be, and the way that it accentuates certain things. It has a very sort of dance like nature to the structure of it because of the accompanying monologue and music and how it ties in with the visuals. But yeah, I was a big fan of that. So those are the shorts that I liked. Watch them. Give them a look. All right. Well, since I did all the shorts in the last one, I guess I figured I'd go through and do another big group of things that I can get out of the way pretty quickly. And so I went through all of the short TV series, and also an OVA or two is probably in here. Basically everything with fairly short episodes. That was pretty much the qualifier. So let's just go through in order. Kaitou Reinya is this one. It's pretty ugly. It's very much flash animation. I think the problem with this one is it has that thing that I don't care for in flash animation, where everything has this like totally unnecessary bounce. It's like completely pointless. It's kind of like a just because we can kind of thing. I would much rather the characters just stay completely still, to be perfectly honest. The humor is not really funny at all. It's just kind of randomness. Yeah, it's pretty lame. That's the best way I can describe it. I don't want to dwell on that one because it's bad. Starry Sky. So I actually watched 2 episodes of this one. Even though looking at it, I thought I was going to drop it like immediately. On the surface level, it does not look good at all. However, there is some charm to this series. It's, I believe, an adaptation of like a visual novel, the kind where you're going around and interacting with all these different cute boys. And the way it starts off, it has this charm to it. It has a little bit of personality and a kind of nostalgic atmosphere. I mean, it's got this nice cheesiness that's pretty enjoyable, and the soundtrack is also pretty solid. I mean, sometimes it's a little lacking, but for the most part, a lot of the tracks I was enjoying quite a bit. So overall, there's a lot of elements that were pulling me in. Even though there would be a couple scenes here and there where I'm like, okay, this is kind of stupid, or like, a character just shows up out of nowhere just because like it's convenient that they are in that place, stuff like that. And I would have been willing to watch more, but then it seemed like it was going to change focus to different characters, because the first 2 episodes mostly focus on this one guy, and the one girl that's kind of his like love interest, or at least that he is in love with, because she was one of the few people that like showed care for him when he was young, because he was kind of like a loner. And it was pretty cute, even if the visuals are pretty ugly. But then they shift to different characters, and I'm like, I don't care that much, and also the show is visually really, really bad. The character designs are not good. I really don't care for that style where their hair is like comes down really far in the middle. I think it looks atrocious, to be perfectly honest. But there was definitely more to it than I anticipated. So I did enjoy it somewhat. Alright, next up, Tono to Isho Ippunkan Gekijo. It's ugly, unfunny. There was like no animation at all in the one episode, like the one minute episode I watched. I think I would have maybe liked it a little bit more if I had some knowledge of Japanese history, because it is very much rooted in that. But even then, it seemed to me like a lot of the humor was pretty much very much that what's the word for it, the basically, you know, the crazy guy and the straight man, and the crazy guy does something crazy, straight man says, wow, that's so crazy. It's not really a formula that it lends itself to a lot of humor if you play it too straight, and this plays it very straight in a very unfunny way. Following that, Hayoru Nyaru Ani, Remember My Love, Craft-sensei. It's like a weirdly long title. This is a series. It's like a parody adaptation of a light novel that has a bunch of different anime adaptations, actually. Light novel is essentially centered around like these alien deities that, you know, are cute anime girls that are inspired by the Lovecraftian lore. I can't say how accurate because I haven't read any Lovecraft. However, they show up and basically they like this boy, and that's you. There you go. You have the plot. It's a bunch of girls hanging around a boy, trying to romance him, and making, you know, lewd remarks, and that's where a lot of the humor is. It's pretty common kind of formula. This short in particular is more of it definitely feels like something that's made for people who already read the original story and liked it and just want like a more like simple, goofy version of the characters. It's like a really basic looking sort of chibi flash aesthetic. The characters animate very, very little. It's a pretty much a voice actor kind of spotlight. One of those shows where there's not much going on visually, but you kind of watch it for the voice acting performance, especially for people that already like the source material. Like, this is just, you know, a little bit of fan service. And it's pretty meh. I wouldn't recommend it, even though I did finish it, because there's definitely moments where it did get me chuckling, but overall I can't say that it was like so funny that I would say it's worth seeking out. There's some decent moments, especially my favorite bits were like in the beginning where like I had no context. It just cuts to the world will end in 30 days. Like, it's absurd, but it works. Or moments like when they'll just randomly in the background of certain scenes have like a cutout of H.P. Lovecraft's head just for no reason. It's just there. Or one episode where it's I feel like I've seen this gag done before, but I still found it a little funny. One of the episodes is a bath episode, and the entire episode is just one shot of like the bottom of the bath with like there's like a little what are you? It's like a chibi like monster character. It's kind of like the animal, cute animal thing that's like bouncing on the side. Other than that, literally no animation, and the camera just stays completely static while we listen to the characters essentially joke about the fact that you're expecting some fan service because it's the bath episode. So there's some enjoyable stuff in there. Lots of references to all sorts of stuff. But overall, not exactly the most amazing thing ever made. Okay. SOS TV Walpurgis Night Fever. That's what I got for you. This one does not leave a whole lot of an impact. And it's pretty ugly visually. And I was watching this first episode, and I was like trying to figure out what I was supposed to get from it, because it's not funny, but it's also not like interesting. I think it's supposed to be like humorous, but their interactions like they're like a little, I guess, leaning into kind of absurd, but it's like it doesn't go any farther enough in any way, any particular direction to leave much of an impact on me or make me interested. And the CG, it's not doing it a whole lot of favors either. So yeah, not a good one, unfortunately. All right, Kaitou. This one is the only real interesting aspect of this that I picked up on is the fact that the main love interest is, it seems like a girl, but then it's actually a boy, though I'm gonna say it's a girl because they seem to be presenting as trans. They present as female, they refer to themselves as female. Yeah. So I was like, okay, what, this doesn't seem to be like actually interested in exploring any of the concepts associated with that, and like outside of just getting a joke out of the fact that, whoa, it's actually a dude, and the main guy clearly is like embarrassed about himself like falling for her. Other than that, it doesn't look good, it's not engaging, it's not interesting. It doesn't seem like it's gonna use what it's established as a way to say anything of value. I couldn't see it. I really didn't see the likelihood of this going anywhere that would be especially interesting to me. So, and also again, something with a primarily comedic focus that is just not very funny. Okay, Shokupan Mimi. Shokupan Mimi is a bunch of very shorts about a cat toast, and it's cute, I guess, but it's not that cute. There we go. That's literally all I have to say. It's the shorts are like literally nothing. It's just like a short, like little bit of cuteness, but there's so little to it that I honestly have nothing to say about it whatsoever. Ore-sama Kingdom. This one is very ugly and boring. I'm kind of repeating myself a lot, but a lot of these, like, it's hard to say anything about them because they leave so little of an impact in any way at all. This one's like trying to be, I guess it's like a romantic type of meme. This girl and lots of guys around her, but it doesn't try and establish any type of like character at the beginning. It's just immediately jumping into, oh, boys, cute, me girl, and I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I don't care yet, and you didn't even try to make me care, but all right. So yeah. Following that, Megane na Kanojo. This one is about glasses on girls. Now, I think the most important reason that I had to drop this was because in the first episode, the main character says that he does not like glasses. And he does not, like, the whole premise of the first episode is he's trying to get the girl he likes to take off her glasses because he thinks she looks cuter without them. And that is an objectively incorrect opinion. Now there is a sort of fun turn to it when it is discovered that actually he himself needs glasses. His vision is actually bad, and he didn't realize it. And I'm sure the later episodes would explore different girls and cute girls with glasses, but the girls are also not very cute. Like, looking at them, I'm not like, wow, those are some cute girls. They're kind of ugly, actually. And I don't really like the main character. I don't like much of anything about it. It's pretty just bland. Like that, me pointing out that he said he didn't like glasses on this girl is the only thing of note that really stood out to me. And a lot of the first episode is just him trying to get her to take the glasses off, and I'm sitting here like, this is kind of dumb. This is kind of dumb. I don't really want to see more of this. All right, finally on to something I actually liked, believe it or not. Miyanishi Tatsuya Gekijo, Omae Umasou Dana. Okay, so this is a series of shorts. It's 23-minute episodes, so really it's more like 2 minutes minus the, like, you know, intro sting and the ED, and any, like, sometimes there'll be a little, like, 10 seconds of recap. Apparently this is a adaptation of a series of children's books about various dynamics between dinosaurs. In fact, looking at the original stories, it looks like they took the visuals straight from the books, maybe added some extra images. A lot of the animation, and it is done with, like, motion tweening. And at first I didn't care for it, but honestly kind of grew on me. The overall aesthetic of it, with it's very, like, childish, and done with, like, this, it looks like markers, like Copic markers or something like that. I like it. It's cute. And it tells a variety of different sort of short stories. Like I'd say it's like 5 episodes per character or so. Going over different dynamics, like a Tyrannosaurus raising a baby herbivore, or a herbivore raising a baby Tyrannosaur. Stuff like that is the different sort of dynamics it explores, and having these different people learn to be, you know, kind and nice, and it's very sweet. It's straightforward, but there's a lot of elements to it that just make me smile. The ED is really great, and I wish I could find the full version, because I can't find the full version anywhere, because this series of novels, or at least part of it, was also adapted into a movie, which is just called Omae Umasou Dana, that came out also in the same year. So I'll be talking about that later. So the problem is, whenever I try and search up the title of this, I either get the book or the movie, because the series is obviously much more obscure. In fact, I'm kind of surprised that I was able to find it at all. But I'm happy, because it was pretty enjoyable. It's nice, it's sweet. Like the ending bit where it's like in the, I guess this might be a spoiler, but I mean, come on, it's chill. I guess I didn't notice until the very end, because I wasn't really thinking about that, because it's kind of like a hiding in plain sight kind of thing. But the last segment focuses on a Tyrannosaurus taking care of a group of Ankylosaurus, and caring for them. And at the end, there's like a bit of a conflict, and then, you know, ultimately everybody's okay in the end, and it's all happy. And the narrator reads off all their names, and their names are what is it? Shiteru is the different names spelling out, you know, love. So it's a really sweet, sappy kind of thing. Gotta save the best for last, right? So I watched Tamayura. This is one that I've actually had on my plan to watch for quite a while. There's a lot of different versions in this long franchise. Looking at it, there's like 4 short movies and 2 seasons that I also have ahead of me to watch, that I'm looking forward to making my way through very, very slowly because it's not the type of thing that you want to rush your way through. But this one is 4 episodes, 4 18-minute episodes. Though really it's like 2:35. What is that? Not 35, like 32-minute episodes. In actuality, because of the way it's divided. I don't know why it counts as 4 episodes. I guess when it aired, it must have been divided that way because it's clearly meant to be like watched as 2 episodes. And all the like sites I saw it on, it was also divided into 2 episodes, not 4. But this is a healing story OVA from Junichi Sato, the man himself. Now, I'm a big fan of Junichi Sato's work, considering I like everything I've seen of Arya quite a bit. I also, I watched the first season of Sailor Moon recently, which is was helmed by him, and I enjoyed that. And I also recently watched Princess Tutu, which I absolutely loved, and again is from him. So going into this, I was expecting good things, and good things are what I got. Now I went out of my way to try and consume this in the right way, because as a Yashike type story, it's like you got to go for the comf. So I settled down in my bed with pulled it up on my phone, got comfy in my blanket with my pillow, and tried to really just sink into the show, just like lose myself in it, and it was great. Like, honestly, like I watched each episode one day apart, each of the 2 episodes, and after watching it, like, my soul did feel healed. It worked. It's got such an intense, nostalgic atmosphere where it's one of those things that's like you find yourself tearing up even though what's happening isn't really sad. It's just sort of this like overwhelming like emotional release that causes tears to well up. And I cried like a couple times watching the episodes. It just works really well. A lot of what the themes it's exploring are things I care about and that resonate with me a lot. Because the premise is essentially about the main girl. She's really into photography, and the things photography can do. And her father, who is no longer alive, was also a photographer. So it's sort of a way through which you can connect with him. And a lot of the episodes, because there's not really a conflict, like most of the characters, like the conflict is that the characters are like figuring each other out, like each figuring themselves out. But what I like is that a lot of it is solved through conversations. Like the characters literally just have conversations about things that trouble them and things that are on their mind, which is, you can just take in the, beautiful scenery as you enjoy these sort of discussions about life and direction. So like the main girl, there's a lot of reflections on like the way we can connect with people through art. Like she really enjoys the ability that these little photos that she's taking can bring joy to other people, or the fact that in the photos of her her dad, that she can connect with him in that way. And stuff like that is pretty powerful and pretty moving. And the way it's presented through this really relaxed, calm, but very happy presentation, I think gives it even more power. That it's not trying to hammer in any of the emotional elements. And I wonder if this is just something that is a hallmark of Sato's work, because I felt very similarly about when I watched Princess Tutu, is that even though there are more heavily dramatic moments, because Princess Tutu is much more fantastical, and the stakes are a lot higher, a lot of the times where the emotional like resonance is at its peak for me, the show is not like trying to make me sad. Like it's more just the circumstance itself is what like I end up finding so moving. The context and the characters and everything coming together. That it doesn't need, the overbearing sad music and the, super dramatic, punchy directing. It can just sort of set it at a distance, let the characters walk around, the environment come together, and, next thing you know, you're crying. So, Tamayura is great. I loved it. I highly recommend watching it. Just go for the max comp, and I hope to check out later installations in the future. With that said, looking at how far we've made it in, I think this is a good cutting off point for this episode of Drop or Not 2010. So if you enjoy this format or you enjoyed listening to it this way, let me know. If you have any thoughts on any of the shows I discussed, also let me know. Part of the reason I enjoy doing these types of series is because, I can get it back and forth with you guys. So I will see you all in the next episode. Peace.